Alright, Chapter 5, Exemption of the Routine Research Use for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration Regulated Investigational Products. 5.1. Use of the marketed drug with the unapproved identification of the good medical practice with the best interest of the patient required with the physician, usually a legal available drug with a biological device according to the best knowledge of the judgment. If the physician use of the product with the indication of the not approved with the label of the responsible with the well-informed of the product based on the use of the firm with the scientific rationale with the sound medical the evidence maintained with the record of the product use with effects. Use of the marketed product with the dismay of the intent of the practice of the medicine does not recover the submission of the initial new drug development. Initial new drug application. However, the physician you would improve the drug with approve of the identification systematically record the data with the drug after the order to sustain with the refer to the claimed therapeutic efficiencies for unapproved identification. Physician conducting clinical investigation situation. Physical investigator must adhere to the requirements of Army Regulation 4038 clinical investigation. Army Regulation 7025 of the research, development, and testing and evaluation research. According to Title 21 CFR 312.2 of the clinical investigation drug product with a lawfully marketed with the United States with must be conducted with the initial new drug application unless the following applies. Investigation not intended to be reported with the FDA with a well-controlled the study with the support of the new indication of the not intended to be with any other significant change with the labeling of the drug. If the drug undergoing an investigation lawfully marked the prescription drug product with the investigation is not intended to support the significant change with adversing of the product. Investigation is not involved with the routine administration of the dosage level, use of position, use in patient population or other factors that significantly increase acceptable risk associated with the use of the drug product. The investigation conducted with compliance with the requirements of institutional use of review set forth in Title 21 CFR 56 requirement of the form informed consent with a C Title 21 CFR 50. Investigation conducted in compliance with Title 21 CFR 312.7. VA supports research which the necessity of the initial new drug application seems unclear and ambiguous in content. Sponsored Representative USAMMDA. 5.2. Treatment of the investigational new drug. For Title 21 CFR 312.34, 312.35, physician may contact the initial new drug sponsor to obtain the drug if he or she is seeking approval of one-time use of the investigation drug with a patient, whether with a non-cure bearable satisfactory alternative drug with the other favorable therapy available to treat with the stage of the intent with the patient with a disease with the treatment of the initial new drug with the sponsor agree with the release of the drug with the treatment and use of the sponsor responsible to obtain permission for the FDA to supply with the drug to the requesting physician. Treatment physicians must wait with 30 days with the sponsor submit for the treatment protocol to the FDA. List of the FDA approve of the treatment with the earlier with the all phase 2 with the investigation drug with the trials are listed with the clinicaltrials.gov website. So I'm going to check out this one, clinical trials. Before a new drug can be used of the medical treatment facility, the physician must through the institutional review board with a record of the medical treatment facility commander will obtain with approval of the medcom commander with the designee. Medcom commander with the medical treatment facility request for the treatment of the initial new drug that must be directed with the commander of the AM Med DC and as clinical investigation regulatory office at 1608 Stanley Road, Fort Sam Houston, Texas Road 7823 50 55 DSN 471 25 11 9302. Then in this case, approval of the grant of the clinical investigation regulatory office, the furnished copy of official of the research protection of the 504 Scott Street for Fort Derrick, Maryland 21702 512. Within the 18th Medical Command request should be directed to the Office of Research Protection on the 504 Scott Street, Fort Derrick, Maryland 21702 5012. Request must include the patient's name and the diagnosis of the drug name, the initial new drug number, the quantity and source of the medical office responsible for the patient, the nature of the treatment used over the investigational product. The responsible for the treating physician obtainment over the approval of the appropriate clinical investigation committee with the initial the institutional review board use of the initial new drug and to me applicable investigator responsible under Title 21 CFR 50, 56, and 312 of the subpart D. In all situations where the one-time treatment is approved, the treatment physician must send with a reporting summary of the case of clinical investigation regulatory office of the U.S. Army MRMC over the research protection fund for the initial new drug addition for the describing the circumstance outcome of the initial new drug. The physician must include a copy of the form of the reports furnished commercial manufacturer of the DA agency the individual connection with the case. 5.3. Treatment of the use of the investigation device. Refer to Title 21 CFR 812.36 of the device for the non-approved of the market under the clinical investigation procedure with immediate and life-threatening disease of the condition of patient where not comparable to the satisfactory alternative treatment of the device or other therapy is available. During clinical trial, prior to final action marketing application, it may be appropriate to use the device in treatment of the patient, not trial under the provision of the treatment of the initial device exemption. 5.4 emergency with the investigational new drug with the unapproved devices. When needed, the initial new drug arises of the emergency situation does not allow for time submission of the treatment. Initial new drug such use must be in accordance with Title 21 CFR 312-36. The emergency situation require the use of the unapproved device. The procedure listed below with the FDA with the guidelines and initial device exemption policy and procedure will be followed. Physician who is intended to treat with a patient with an unapproved medical device for the emergency situation should be concluded. Patient's life-threatening condition require the immediate treatment and no generally acceptable the alternative treatment if the condition exists, and because of the immediate need to use the device, there is no time in the existing procedure to get the FDA approval for such use. The physician will make the determination per patient circumstances meet the above criteria unless the potential benefit of the use of the unapproved device substantial reason to believe the benefits will exist. The development of the device over the circumstance meet the criteria listed above. The physician should follow with any of the patient protection procedures as possible. Such patient protection procedures include obtaining informed consent of the patient, legal representative, clearance of the institution specified with their policy, concurrence with the initial review board chairperson, initial and independent assessment with the uninvolved physician, authorized individual device exemption, sponsor approve the individual initial device exemption exists for the device. After the emergency occur with the treatment, the physician will respond for the ensure that a certain follow-up with the procedure that occur with the initial device exemption exists for the device. Physician should provide the initial device exemption, sponsor station, patient follow-up information allowed with the sponsor comply with the report and requirement of the initial device exemption regulation. Initial device exemption that physician should submit with the follow-up of the report with the use of the device. Initial device exemption staff of the report shall contain the summary of the condition constituting emergency patient protection measure that will be filed with the patient outcome and emergency information. 5.5 Emergency procurement of drug and biological foreign suppliers. Emergency procurement of foreign drugs comparable to the character of the FDA approved the drug with the Surgeon General policy of the drug with the Army or the medical treatment facility that will be approved with the FDA with the procure with the FDA approved with the supply with the however the direction of the situation. The drug cannot be procured with the timely manner with the FDA with approved supply with a specialized medical treatment facility located outside of the continental United States with the FDA with approved drug will be unavailable to U.S. supply with the drugs distributed to foreign supply with the procured provided one of the following circumstances given the drug is needed to save the life of the limited eyesight at the time required with the procure of the drug of the U.S. supply of the would endanger the patient's well-being with the drug is needed to continue life-sustaining chronic therapy. Time required with the procure of the drug from a U.S. supplier would interpret such therapy and endanger the patient's well-being. Drugs purchased with the foreign supplier such as the drugs must contain the same active agreements formerly with the same dosage of the forms and like product procured in the U.S. supply with the active ingredient dosage form of the product procured with the foreign supplier is not available to the United States. The drug will be considered investigational and procedures described above the use of the investigational drug apply. Procedures of emergency is above the use of investigation drug and apply with the procedures of emergency procurement of drug with the foreign supply with the chief of the pharmacy services must initiate the request and purchase of the drug from a foreign supplier when the professional judgment necessitates such a purchase. The medical treatment facility commander with the designated must sign over the purchase request of the drug with a foreign supplier. The chief of the pharmacy serve with the maintaining the record of the use of the drug with the procure with the foreign supplier with a copy of the record with the must be forward with the commander of the Army Medical Department and Center of the School and the Clinical Investigation Regulatory Office of 1608 Stanley Road, Fort Sam, Houston, Texas 878 2340 5055 within 5 working days of the drug of the procure of the foreign supply with the 18th Medical Command with the record must be forward with the Office of Research Protection with the 504 Scott Street, Fort Derrick, Maryland 2172 with the 5012 and with a copy of the record must also present in the next regulatory scheduled meeting with the Medical Treatment Facility Pharmacy the Therapeutic Committee. The record will consider the drug trade name, the generic name, the manufacturer, lot number, the expiration date, the amount, and sort of the brief justification why the procurement of the drug of the foreign supplier was necessary to identify with the patient. For example, the initial last 4 digits of the patient's social security number that will receive the drug procured with the foreign supplier. Emergency procurement of the new vaccine with the device for the biological product for the practice of the medicine, vaccines, and other biological products may not be procured from foreign suppliers if the same vaccine with the biological product is available to the U.S. supply. With the products available to the U.S. supply, but there is no need to procure vaccine biological product that is not available to supply with the United States. Vaccine and the biological product will be considered investigational when the procedure used for the investigational drug apply. 5.6. Use of investigational new drug with approved with the unimproved with the indication of the deployment of the military situations, force health protection. Section 1107 in Title 10 United States Code that describes specific requirements for use of investigational drugs with approved drugs for unimproved and indication of the military contingencies. Operation statute applies wherever the Secretary of Defense requires that the member of the armed force to receive initial new drug or drug unimproved for its applied use. Implementation instruction Title 10 U.S. Standard Code 1107 and described in Title 21 CFR 5023 Executive Order 13139 improve the health protection military personnel participating in particular military operation with the Department of Defense Directive 620002. 572 Emergency Use of the Authorization Project BioShield Act. Section 564 of the Federal FDC Act was amended by Project BioShield Act of 2004. Public Law 108276 permits the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services to authorize use of the unimproved medical product for the unimproved use of the unimproved of an approved medical product during a declared emergency involving heightened risk of attack of the public. U.S. military forces specified biochemical, radiological, nuclear agent or agent. Section 5 under Section 564, Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services may allow medication countermeasures to be used with emergency diagnose, treat, and prevent serious life-threatening diseases or conditions caused by such agents when they were not adequate or prove the available alternative to protect the American people or the U.S. Armed Forces. Section 564B1 of the FD&C Act provides that before an emergency use authorization may be issued, the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services must declare an emergency based on one of the following grounds: termination of Secretary of Human Security, that there is a domestic emergency, significant potential for the domestic emergency involving heightened risk to attack specified biological, chemical, radiological, nuclear agent or agents. Terminate Secretary of Defense that there is a military emergency, significant potential for the military emergencies involving heightened risk of the U.S. military forces attack with specified biological, chemical, radiological, nuclear, or agents, or terminating the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services of the Public Health and Emergency under Section 319 Public Health Service Act effects that has significant potential effect with the national security that involves a specified biological, chemical, radiological, nuclear agent, or agent-specified disease condition that may be attributable to such agent or agents. 5.8. Documentation reporting emergency use of the inventions lacking U.S. food, drug, with an administrative approval of deployed military situations. Highly poisonous pit vipers and cobras and scorpions can be found in many areas of the military forces deployed, with untreated snake bites can cause convulsions, paralysis, hemorrhage, and death. The scorpion stings affect with the nervous system. The most appropriate treatment for the significant snake scorpion envenomation is specific anti-venom administration trained medical personnel. Anti-venoms used for the trait with an envenomation with an endemic species often found with the FDA approved the products because they are made for or used in areas other than the United States. The military medical care system purchases stock and specific species specifically anti-venoms locally for the local use. They are not imported by the United States and will reissue. The uses and reports for the anti-venoms will be made with the FDA, but under the initial new drug held by the Surgeon General, not require precautionary measures. Use of one of the initial new drug anti-venoms required for the specific report and trivial reporting can be easily accomplished. Important with the treatment is fully documented with the patient record of each case of the product is ordered, and with the information 1 through 7 below that must provide with the pharmaceutical service. These status must be forwarded with the pharmacy service with the theater with the pharmacy staff officer with the theater pharmacy staff officer have responsibility to pass the data to these reports for the commander USMMDA Fort Derrick, Maryland 2172 9240 with a submit with a timely fashion of the FDA at least annual with the full name and rank of the patient, branch of service of the patient, at least 4 digits of the patient's social security number, anti-venom product used, quantity of the product, and use the number of vials, total number of mils in total dose, patient clinical outcome from the treatment, and provide the name and rank and the last 4 social security numbers used identified. Chapter 6, Scheduled 1 Controlled Substances.